for greater empire.
I think the most immediate purpose is oil, I have no question in my mind, but the more long-term issue is the strategic. Control of the region of the Persian Gulf area that substantial interests of the United States as an empire and any other potential imperial tendency by China or Russia or Europe as potentially. So United States is positioning itself in a place that can have global control.
The problem is that empires, whether it's the British or the French or the Germans in the 19th and 20th centuries, or the American empire before it became a global empire, always act in their own interests. That's the only reason they're there. It's in their own interests. It's not to do the good. It's not to do a war of good versus evil. It's a war of national or imperial self-interest. That is why they are there. And the reason why the whole region is dotted with military bases, and you have the largest foreign base of the United States, the Al Udeid base in Qatar, a tiny principality. That's where you have it. Why? Because of the oil. Now, I don't think the war in Iraq was exclusively about oil, but oil is ever present in the discussions. And if you read these memoirs dictated by Paul O'Neill to Ron Suskind, which have been published recently, they are very revealing, saying that the plan to take Iraq predated 9/11 and was discussed within the first 3 weeks of the Bush administration being in office, including how they would divvy out the oil. Now, this is O'Neill talking. This is not some conspiracy theorist in cyberspace.
Pay attention to what is going on, as much as these have become cliched buzzwords, is true. It is imperialism. It is about dominating the world, and they themselves are actually not that shy about that. I mean, it's in all these documents, in the American Century and all that stuff. I mean, it's a very concerted, sophisticated plan to be the #1 power. So we're not conspiracy theorists. We're not people with nothing to do who just likes to say anti-government stuff. Anyone who wants to pay attention, just look at these documents and look at it, most importantly, beyond documents, look at the action. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. There has not been one shred of evidence.
Right now, statistically and point of fact, the operation in Iraq, which was predicated on the assumption that Saddam Hussein was in control of the weapons of mass destruction, have been proven to be wrong. I mean, they cheated and they lied their way to this war against the will of the world, both in the United Nations and in the February 15th demonstrations globally in the streets by people who demonstrated against these wars. They have not been able to produce a shred of evidence connecting Saddam Hussein to weapons of mass destruction.
There wasn't one reason for this. You don't reduce this to one reason. There were many reasons for this, which is why they focused so laser-like, as Clinton used to say, on Iraq. Taking down Hussein was seen as a way to shore up the U.S. position in the Middle East. It was seen as a way to shock and awe the world, to intimidate not only the masses of people but other countries. Taking down Hussein was also seen as a means to fuel this war on terror and embolden people with a quick victory and keep the momentum going from September 11th. This is why they were in a rush. Remember, the UN weapons inspector said, why don't we take our time? Why don't we wait? Bush, oh no, we're in a hurry, we can't do that. Why couldn't they? Because every day they waited following September 11th, the connection between that emotional horror and this war would be diminished. That's why they were in a hurry. You know, it's interesting, now they're trying to cover this whole thing up by blaming the CIA and claiming it was all about bad intelligence and refusing, of course, to investigate themselves and how this intelligence was fabricated. And this is simply an effort to prevent people from understanding the history and the agenda that I'm laying out here.
These are not conservatives. They are radical, reactionary statists. They have a very narrow hold on political power. They must maintain it in order to carry out that program. You see it day by day in the legislations produced and the actions undertaken. And they have an international program, which has been announced, dominating the world by force, permanently, preventing any challenge, and in particular controlling the very crucial energy resources of the world, mostly in the Middle East. Even if it does increase the threat of destruction, in fact maybe destruction of the species, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, terror of which the population of the United States will also be subject sooner or later as before.
Every single place, every single location on earth, Iraq, Afghanistan, Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, anywhere that U.S. military presence is evident and palpable, you will have an increase, global increase in number of terrorism. The war on terrorism increases terrorism, not decreases. Look at the evidence. Right now, what happens in Chechnya and in Russia, for example, in Somalia, in Morocco, in North Africa, in Central Asia, in Malaysia, Indonesia, in Western Europe, globally and statistically, we are more prone to acts of terrorism and more acts of state aggression. That is, you have US and UK and any number of allies that they can mobilize committing horrible acts of illegal wars. The war in Iraq was illegal and immoral and had no backing from the United Nations.
I think it's totally hypocritical, and I think it's totally self-interested and materialistic. And I think Cheney and all of them, and I think they have, it's proven that they have an agenda with Pearl and Wolfowitz and so on. You know, they had a plan to reorganize the Middle East.
I think it's odd that we feel so justified doing this when everyone's telling us it's wrong, when the people of its own country are saying we shouldn't be here.
Lower the minimum wage! Lower the minimum wage!
Wait, we have a question. Just why are you in Iraq and why are you staying there?
Oil.
Important of all, the job would require men, hardy men, determined men, men who were willing to leave families and friends and journey halfway around the world on a quest that might end in failure. And each man had his own problems to weigh, each his own decision to make, for they were being asked to make a life